Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel. It's 8 AM, an early start, but something that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. We're here in Fiorano, just outside of Ferrari's hometown of Maranello, for my first drive in a future Shmeemobile, the new Ferrari 296 GTS. Now I have one of these on order. I've not yet chosen the specification, but today is about discovering all about it. We're going to be driving on some magnificent roads, the likes of Passo della Futa, Passo della Raticosa, plenty of opportunity to find out about the GTS, which is actually Ferrari's first ever production V6 powered Spider. We have the 830 horsepower 3-litre twin turbocharged hybrid V6 as we've seen in the 296 GTB. For the GTS we have the retractable hardtop. We'll be learning all about that as well. Beautiful design with the flying bridge across the back and plenty more to find out as we go and explore to the fullest the new Ferrari 296 GTS. I am itching to find out more about this car and to get it out onto the road, but it's actually my first time being up close and personal with a car for which I have placed a deposit. So let's start with a very quick walk around to take in all of the details of the 296 GTS. Now, like I said, the GTB and the GTS, the Coupe and the Spider respectively, were planned together from the outset. They were designed and developed simultaneously, and as such, for the Spider, you maintain these magnificent lines, the beautiful design of the 296 family. Now, the 296 itself is named after what is technically a 3-litre, but they call it the 2.9-litre V6. 296 GTB for Gran Turismo Berlinetta, GTS for Gran Turismo Spider. Of course, here we're talking the open-top driving experience, and we'll focus a lot on what that's all about. But the 296 has this beautiful design linking to Ferrari's Evolve, the shape of these rear arches and the intakes here for cooling reminiscent of the 250 LM. You've got this flying bridge that runs between the two buttresses like you would have found on the Dino, and plenty of other cues all around. And in fact, under this smoked tinted rear glass is where you find that engine, the engine with an electric motor also on the crank driving the rear wheels with all 830 horsepower. Unlike the SF90, there are no electric motors up front, which means you do have more practicality from a larger luggage space and storage, but it does mean it is entirely rear driven. As we look around a little bit more closely, you start to spot the aero that has been neatly integrated. For example, the openings here that you have underneath the daytime running lights, down on the front bumper. Spot what they call the T-tray down there at the front to help with the aero management and the flow underneath the car. We've got the exterior carbon contrasting against this magnificent blue Corsa exterior that we have on this particular car with the silver wheels, a spec of which I am a very big fan. Back here we've got the active aero spoiler. This actually extends depending on the different driving modes and how it's set up while you're out on the road. We've got this finished black exhaust system tailpipe back here, just a single exhaust output right in the center and the fairly aggressive diffuser sitting down below it. But this is really a stunning design. So the Coupe has this flying bridge as well to help with the airflow and air management over the rear deck. The Spider carries that through with a window that's just beneath that you can open and close, and this dual tone finish to really complete the look back here as well. Inside, to pop open the door and show you here, we've got the dual tone with the crema or maybe Sabia leather with the black contrast, the way it wraps around similarly to the SF90. It's all focused on the driver with this lovely H pattern control for your gearbox selector in the center. But I think I need to step in here. We need to get it started and get this drive on the way. We've got very little time in our hands today. We've got a long way to go, not that much time to complete it. So step one, wake the car up very quickly. Now, if you were to start it in hybrid, you'll basically be driving on the eDrive system. We've got 17 kilometers of charge, in fact, available for us right now. But if you pop it into performance or to qualifying with the e-Manatino and then start it, we'll get the sound of the Piccolo V12. There we go. Cold start sequence running. We'll give that just a moment, and then it'll be all about the drive today and finding out everything there is to experience in the 296 GTS. Let's go then. Let's take this out for a drive, and very shortly I will pop the roof up because we're going to be driving down the motorway to begin before we get to the mountain passes. So if I pop it back into hybrid on the e-Manatino, we are effectively immediately driving in an electric convertible Ferrari. We have the lift system. I will just use that very briefly as we head out onto the main road, but on electric power you have about 25 kilometers of range, so 16 miles, up to a maximum speed of about 140 kilometers an hour, and you have 167 horsepower. So more than enough really for gentle driving like this. As soon as you press performance, the engine fires back in, as you can hear, revs up there, gives us some of that sound, which is really quite a marvellous thing, because you think V6, you're like, no, there's no V8 in it, but to be honest, it is a glorious, glorious sound that you get out of this. Now I'm going to take it pretty easy here, because we can do the roof, but we are limited to a maximum speed when doing so of 45 kilometers per hour. It's about just under 30 miles per hour or so, but generally if you're around town or something, not too bad. And then we've got different combinations with the rear window down that we can experiment with as well. Anyway, we've got a red traffic light ahead of us, so no big deal, just backing off for a moment, pop it back into hybrid, because we're going to be cruising, and in hybrid it will effectively use the battery power. The battery is in the bulkhead behind you, right down towards the bottom to keep the centre of gravity down. It will use that up on its own kind of calculated cycle. If you're in performance, it will keep the battery topped up. In qualifying, it will use maximum power effectively, and in electric drive it will run fully off the electric side of things. If, let's say, you're arriving towards home late at night and you want the car to be nice and quiet. Obviously, we're going to have a little bit of a run through of all of the different settings, but it's instantly very familiar from my SF90 in terms of the digital display in front of me, in terms of the controls on this steering wheel, the E-Manettino, the Manettino, the bumpy road button, and all of those features. But it's a very different car, and this is what I experienced driving the GTB for the first time, is that it's a completely different character from the SF90. The SF90 feels like the grown-up older brother, the even more premium, even more potent with 1,000 horsepower and the instant torque of the better launch of the four-wheel drive, obviously with the power going to the front wheels as well, whereas this is a little bit more boisterous, a little bit more ready to go out and have some fun. Anyway, let's find the motorway, let's get this cruise underway and head towards the mountain passes. Now we're heading out onto the Autostrada, but before we get to the mountain roads and we've got this bit of a cruise, I want to answer a question that I'm sure you are wondering. Why, given I own an SF90, which was my first ever new Ferrari and I intend to keep for the long haul, am I also buying a 296? You could argue that these are both hybrid Ferrari supercars that do a fairly similar thing. Well, the long story short is, like I just said, they have completely different characters. And just driving gently at the moment before we get to open it up a little bit more later, you feel that immediately. Obviously, the engine is different. My SF90 is a Stradale, which is the coupe. The 296 is going to be a Spider, so one fixed roof experience, one convertible experience. And obviously this completely different character as well. This feels instantly, I want to say, cheekier. That's what it's about. It's about being a little bit more boisterous, a different kind of car, a slightly smaller car in the way that it feels and the way that it looks. They look quite different from one another as well. And I think part of it is the Ferrari collection type thing, you know, wanting to grow a little collection of a few Ferraris. I also have the GTC 4 Lasso V12. There will certainly be other Ferraris joining the garage in due course as well. And it's fun to experience this technology, to enjoy it. And I've been in performance mode most of the time, because when you're in hybrid, effectively, I'm going to put it back into auto as well, it drains the battery down quite quickly, so that 25 kilometer range in normal driving will be gone after about 50 kilometers or so on the road, and that kind of thing. So 16 miles, will be gone in just over 30 miles or so of driving, and then it goes in and out. And it's quite different in here how it fires the V6 versus the V8 in the SF90. Just gone into electric drive. The SF90 kicks in a little bit quicker, and here it kind of over revs, I want to say, the V6 when it fires the engine up. Let me do it, in fact. Press performance. You can hear it firing up to nearly 3,000 RPM before it settles down again to about 2,000 RPM, back into hybrid, because we're just chilling for the drive at the moment. So to me, they're quite different cars. They're going to be about 2 years apart. In fact, for me, obviously, I'm a fairly, let's say, new Ferrari collector, so I'm not at the top of the list for either of these kind of things. I had to wait until a few other people have purchased theirs before, but different spec experiences. I'm a little bit addicted to the new car buying experience, I'm not going to lie. We're on electric now, so on the throttle, there we go, kicks in the engine, because I was asking a little bit more of it than it was actually offering me at the time. So I feel like they're different enough that I wanted to give it a go, and that's really going to, I think, come to a point when we get to the passes, we get the roof down, and on a lovely day like today, blue skies, we get to have some serious fun with this thing. No sooner have I put this in race than the road is seriously chopped up, but this is where the 296 actually manages to handle it fairly brilliantly, because this is rough, and in the cabin it's not so bad. And in fact, if I popped it back down to sport and even pressed bumpy road, it would be able to handle it even better than it was doing. And just being in third gear, I need to explain a little bit more this Piccolo V12, which in Italian translates to little V12, and that's because of the sound it makes. Now they have this very clever hot tube system which brings natural exhaust sound into the cabin. So what you hear inside here is the V6, but the V6 is, well, you could think of it as half a V12. It revs to 8,500, pretty much up towards the top where you get with the Ferrari V12s. It has that high pitch wail and scream and flair to it that you want from a Ferrari engine, and it just sounds magnificent, to be honest. You forget that it's a V6 almost immediately. You're not feeling, I don't have the sound that I want out of this, but it's quite a different character, like I said, to the V8 engine. We drop it down to second gear. This road is so bumpy, you have no idea. We're getting towards the main pass where obviously it will be an absolute delight. The sound off the walls, off the rocks, off the buildings. Could it get better? And I tell you what, it is amazing what a good job they have done of ensuring that the blustery air stays above you. Now if you drive in the 812 GTS, you feel distinctly that it's very, very windy in the cabin. In here, that wind is not getting me at all. And, you know, we're out accelerating on these twisty roads. Gosh, look at this tarmac. Oh, that sound is amazing. Yeah, this is really chopped up, but it rides it so well comparatively. I'm impressed with this, and it's actually something that Ferrari do really nicely on their cars like this. And you can order the Assetto Fiorano track version, which gives you the Multimatic dampers and a firmer ride. But if you buy the car in road spec, as I did with the SF90, and as about 2/3 of customers are expected to do with the 296, and I know from others who have driven Assetto Fiorano cars and then driven regular cars, they do a wonderful job of making it compliant for the road. Sometimes you might consider it a little bit too soft if you're really, really dialing it up, but in general driving conditions, it's just pleasant. It's what you want. It's what you realistically hope for in a car, rather than an artificial, over-the-top, making it wildly aggressive and firm purely for the sake of it. This is cool, and we're actually building up significant amounts of charge very quickly, having only just gone back into performance mode. The shifts are so fast. Haven't got anything like full throttle yet, just while I get a little bit more accustomed to what this thing can offer. But I tell you what, down a road like this, it is doing a wonderful, wonderful job of it. Pulled over for a second. How peaceful is this? Right beside an amazing, amazing road. I want to show you a little bit more of the engine in here. So very quickly, there's a little catch just in here to pop open the engine glass, which reveals our twin turbo V6, or as much of it as you can see, because it is buried deep down inside there. That produces 663 horsepower. You can see some of the orange highlights, which are of course to do with the electrical system, the additional 167 that you get from that. But the way they blend this glass through to the gloss black over the buttresses to give it that clean look is super, super smart. Now, when you're driving, you have no awareness of what's happening with the active spoiler. You don't see it popping out or anything like that, but it is moving out towards the back to help with downforce, to help with stability at the back of the car, especially when you're dialed up into some of the higher driving modes. Tell you what though, this is pretty perfect right now. This car, roof down, I can't believe how calm it is in the cabin. Big, big, big surprise. Super, super calm. And that's all thanks to the design of this and the way they've reshaped it and remolded it, obviously for the Spider, but to keep that same look, to keep that very same clean line to the car, effectively with this large Targa roof panel that's just tucked away and stowed and tucked under there. It's hard to believe, but we're still not actually on the main Passo della Raticosa, but the tarmac here is so much smoother. I can go up into race. Even in race, you can still press the Manettino for bumpy road. The sounds of this engine and exhaust when you rev it up. It's also surprisingly loud within the cabin as we get to smaller, bumpier section there, but it still manages to ride it. Down into a hairpin, drop the gears, even through a hairpin, keep the hands fixed on the wheel. This is an absolute delight. This is magnificent. This is wonderful. This is heavenly. Sometimes you're tempted to short shift just because the car is so quick, so unbelievably quick. Of course, we've got carbon ceramics as standard as well. Yeah, when you fully launch it and give it full beams, it takes off. And I mean, this level of power, goodness me. There's so much grip as well. Almost too much, dare I say it, and this is without the optional Cup 2R tyres. If you have the Assetto Fiorano and you have the carbon fibre wheels, then you can have the painted livery, and you can also opt to have Cup 2s fitted as well. What a thing! What a thing! It's got to be said that the views from up here are pretty impressive. The top of Passo della Raticosa, there are quite a few other cars around as well, everybody getting the shots, because when you've got a location like this, roads like this, and cars that look as good as this, you have to make the most of the opportunity. Blue Corsa over the light interior is a winning spec, but I tell you what, I want to keep driving. Let's hop back in. Shortly we're going to be heading back towards the Autostrada, so the last little bit of twisty road driving, and I'm actually going to put it into qualifying mode. Not that we necessarily need even more power. You can go all the way into CT off, but a little bit extreme. I'm going to keep traction and everything as it should be, given we are just driving on the road. Now you do hear a little bit of the squeal, probably a combination of brakes and regenerative braking, similar to what you get actually on the SF90. You just get used to some of those sounds in the background. But the thing that is really impressive here is how little wind blustering you feel in the cabin. I've said it before and I'll probably say it again, that's my biggest takeaway. And then the character of the engine, the snaps, the cracks, the different sounds that you hear out of it. There's so much going on. It's such a cool series of noises and just different things happening out of this. And the shifts are obviously so fast with those little pops that you often get out of 6-cylinder power plants. Just a combination that impresses so much more than you initially think it's going to. You know, I think there's that, oh, a Ferrari with a V6, I'm not sure about that, until you actually drive it, and all of a sudden, any doubts you might have had actually go away. You're just cocooned in here in a lovely way. Imagine taking this on a massive road tour. It'd be such a suitable car for the purpose. It is so well suited to taking your luggage with you, going on a week road trip, comfortable inside. These are the regular seat. You have the regular seat and the style seat, which are basically the same, and then you can have the bucket. But to be honest, I'd have this car without the Assetto Fiorano. In fact, that's how I will have it, because there'll be a VS, a Versione Speciale, that follows. The VS is always the Ferrari code name for the invariable track-focused version that comes down the line, and that'll be the one to have in the hardcore spec. This is the one to have for the road, for driving in these kind of environments, for enjoying these kind of roads. Just drop back down, second gear, foot down. It's so silly. It's so silly getting up towards the red line. It's really frantic at the top end. It's a bit of a different feel to the SF90. In the SF90, it's much more, let's say, linear power delivery, the way the electric side of things works to counter the turbo, shall we say. Not that there's a significant feeling of turbo lag in here, and in fact you get the most amazing turbo swooshes upon liftoff, but it's not quite as responsive as the SF90. Gosh, even still, in gear, just unbelievably quick, unbelievably capable. The 296 GTB has already proven to be a huge success for Ferrari, with orders for 3 years, and the 296 GTS is going to follow the same suit, because it's a winning package. They've just got this absolutely right. That's cool. That's the Lamborghini Huracan police car. That is the police Lamborghini Huracan in action on the highway. That's really insane. Here we are then, arrived in Forte dei Marmi. In just a moment, we'll be handing back the keys right up in front of us. I'm going to pop it into hybrid, into electric for the time being, because I'd like to show you a little bit more around the interior of the 296 GTS before passing this car back. Things like the screens, the infotainment, some of your driver controls, and we'll also take a look in a moment at the mechanism from the outside for folding the roof away as well. So for the dashboard, we have this 16-inch curved digital display as we've seen on the Roma and the SF90 Stradale, where you have a series of different bits of information, the different screens that you can slide across, and you can also have a few different views, all of which is controlled through the toggle here on the right-hand side of the steering wheel. Now, these touch controls have been a big talking point. I quite like them, I've got used to it, but if you're not familiar with it, it does take some adjusting, as one of the other cars comes to be handed back right in front of us. But effectively, you swipe this across to change the display screen. Still a little bit of a lag, but I would say more responsive than in my SF90. You can then have a look in some of these screens at other panels, for example, like your hybrid and your trip and all that kind of stuff that you've got in there, the G meters and whatnot. If you press View Max just here, you'll then get the full screen navigation view, and there is a third view as well where you have the partial navigation at the bottom and the more prominent rev counter up across the top. If you go back to the standard view, you get that very large central rev counter, that traditional look, where you can change the color as well. It's set for yellow, but you can change that if you wish, with the 8,500 RPM sitting just across from the very top. Now, also on the steering wheel, you have your cruise controls, your audio, you have this e-Manatino here. So just to go back onto performance, oh, I think the car has, there we go, woken up. It's running a cold start. I've only been stopped for just a moment. That's quite interesting. All the way up into qualifying. When it's running the cold start, you can't go back into eDrive, but when you do go into eDrive, you get a very different display. Maybe we'll have that in just a moment. Your normal Manatino is on the right-hand side here, as it always has been, where down at the bottom you have wet. It gives you the representation of this on the dashboard as well. Sport, race, up to CT off, or if you hold it, it then goes into full ESC off if you want to live on the wild side of things. This is what you can press to go into bumpy road mode, so it's more firm by default, and you soften it up with a press. It goes out of bumpy road when you change the modes, because for example in wet it has that basically always on. You've got your wiper controls and your light controls here as well. The magnificent shift paddles on the back, and because we're in hybrid, it finished the cold start, so it switched it off. If you go into eDrive, you get that blue view, which gives you a chart up to 100% of how much electric power you're using. In fact, in all of the displays, even if we go back in here, you've got your boost, which gives you a blue ring around the outside of how much electric you're using, and you get a green charge bar here. So when you're braking, or even when you're under load but not full load, it's actually charging itself up, which is quite clever. If we start it back up, and you do get used to all of this, it revs really quickly and sounds awesome. Big fan of that. Much more of a fan of it than I first expected when I heard that this car was going to feature a V6. Our lift system control is here. These are for your mirrors. You basically touch the side you want and then adjust it. This does take some getting used to. This is a little bit fiddly to adjust the mirrors, but once you know what you're doing, it's a little bit more self-explanatory, and you could fold the mirrors in as well with a press of the button just there, and they will swing in. We've got the button to open the door. Here is where you have your charging flap, petrol flap release, and to open the bonnet. We'll have a look at that. And your memory controls for the seats. Your main seat controls are just down here for the backrest and for the base, with all of the bolsters, and even adjusting the front being through the infotainment system, as I showed you just before, with a small cubby here for a bottle of water, a drink bottle, that kind of thing. Over to the passenger side, we've got the passenger display. You've probably seen this in other Ferrari models. It's an option to have. You've got the performance info, audio, and the passenger has control as well over their seats and equivalent settings from this side as well. So in here is where they can turn on and change all of these different settings. A little bit fiddly from this side. You can turn it off if you wish, or you can obviously have this fully illuminated with all of the performance data. Just to show you quickly, it even shows us the live rev counter feedback there with the 296 GTS graphic right above. Looking around a bit further, you've got the dual tone finish to the seats. These are the style seats with this insert up top. You've got this small amount of space here, which is actually tremendously useful. Unlike in the SF90 Spider, where you have the fixed bulkhead behind, you could actually fit a few small soft bags, well, one on each side down there, which just expands the usability when you're on a road trip. In the center here, you've got the selector for reverse. Love those little illuminations. Auto or manual on the gearbox. I'm going to pop it back into gear. This one doesn't have the reversing camera, but that's an option. Launch control, should you wish. We're not in the right settings at the moment because the park brake is on. Your window controls, the rear window control. So this is where you can choose to lower that down. Now, I found it quite noisy from the wind when driving with the roof up and just the rear window down. but obviously when you've got the roof down, you can use that for a few different options. And we've got the switch for the roof and the key just here as well. It's actually quite difficult to get these out when they're fully inserted down. In the armrest, we've got 2 USB ports, small amount of space, and this lovely finish that wraps around the cabin. I have that on the 296 and I really recommend it. I think it finishes the interior beautifully. So I want to show you this roof. So let me hop out the car and give you a little demonstration of what that's actually like from the outside. I guess I need to be inside to actually show you, but it's quite easy to do this. Basically, pull up the lever, it will start the motions. As you can see, the rear deck folds backwards, then the 2 pieces of the hardtop tuck away and fold in towards that storage space, that cubby that you have back there, comes back down, takes 14 seconds, windows go up by default, nice and easy, just like that. I'm going to close it all back up again just to pop it the other way. But you can do this, as I said, up to 45 kilometers per hour, about 30 miles per hour while you're driving. Nice and easy. Going with the hardtop gives you that coupe feel inside. And to be honest, I imagine the majority of customers, like myself, will opt for the GTS, because in here, having this extra space just makes it all super, super easy. The car just looks awesome. Obviously, we didn't see it from the outside with the roof up earlier, but they've created this distinct 2-part cabin. You know, everything here that wraps around, encompassing the whole cabin element, finished in the gloss black. The contrast, you can have it in body color, but I really like the way that looks, and particularly silver wheels on this car as well to finish it off with those carbon ceramics that sit behind. Now, we've been driving with the Pilot Sport 4S tires, which clearly work brilliantly for this kind of setup. I have Cup 2s on the SF90, a little bit more track performance, but if you're driving on the road, that's the right option. You can go to the Cup 2R if you want the full kind of extreme side of things. So 296 GTS, I'm not gonna lie, I'm very excited. That is quite the car. That has been quite the drive, a whole lot of fun, seriously impressive performance, absolutely brilliant experience to drive. They've just got everything right. As I said, they just got everything with this, I would say, right. The looks, the drive, the technology, the soundtrack from the V6. I cannot wait as another car rolls straight on by for the time being. I guess I better go and give them the keys for this one back. But that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching as always, guys. I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.